Everybody, and I'm here for funding and financing topics. It depends, of course, if you're a startup or not a startup, or perhaps investors or bystanders, stakeholders, whatever. Perhaps some of the things are interesting for you, but I think because it is getting dark and we are living in times of turmoil, economic crisis, there is something for everything of you, and especially when I come to the topic of resilience, financial resilience, but also team resilience, etc. This is all my topics. I run an agency for equity acquisition, so accompanying companies in financial rounds. I'm managing partner at the Minted. There we focus on all the grant stuff, and I'm currently consuming my own medicine with Growing Loud, an impact project. So I tried to pick the most difficult parts of startup life which are available to refresh my business model validation skills. Principally for startups, there is no such thing like the best financing mix. So often approach me, how do we do that? And there is one solution, one fits all. It doesn't exist here. It depends really on the type of the project. If you're perhaps in hardware, I hope not, or more in AI, sustainability. If you combine those, then you have, at least in perspective for public funding, chances.
Okay. Yes, we can.
I need this one. Okay. But in the end, it really depends on which part of the journey you're currently moving on. And oh, wonderful! Good. I can explain. That is wonderful for Steuerprüfung. This is classical AI startup. So the labels are delivered by AI. Or is this working now? So actually, you have a big bunch of grant financing. As I said, with AI, you're there on a good path usually, and equity. So you use you try at least to collect the equity and to leverage it with the grant financing. This is the ideal situation at the starting phase for a classical AI startup. Especially you have a lot of risk at the beginning. Nobody knows what's coming out, perhaps nothing. So you need the money of people who either love you very much and topic, or who read your application and say this is wonderful stuff, perhaps the future. And then this is actually, you see, it's more varied. You have more variations. This is a classical scale-up. So you have already cash flow, turnover. I know this is a strange thing for most startups, but I think I come back to that. This is important. And then you have grants, and perhaps you have crowd investments, subsidiary loans, and then, especially if you go into this real scale-up phase with internationalization, etc., then you can start playing with loans, but loans backed by a guarantee. So usually in all the countries, Austria, Germany, but I think also in other countries, there really are governmental institutions helping you with bringing up everything what the bank needs to get you covered with loan. The principle is, as long as you're in the loss situation, it is the significance of grants is dominant, and as soon as you get into profits, you're not out of risk. You can start playing and taking the risk of loans. But I think in one of the biggest misunderstandings and of the biggest risks and of the biggest failures in resilience, financial resilience, which you need in these times, is the understanding of grants. And I see it very often, especially with AI startups, that they rely on grants only. Of course, it is a hand-egg problem, because as long as the AI is not spitting out what the user wants to have, you need the grants, and you cannot generate cash flow. But nevertheless, it is important to stress also two other instruments, and besides grants, there is, as I said, turnover, and there is also the investors. So why do I say that? In the beginning, you're running around quite chaotically. You have to validate a lot of things, not only data and so stuff, but also your hypothesis on the business case. Do you really do something where later people are willing to pay for it? This is the big question. If you achieve that point, and this point repeatedly, then you have a functioning business case. But by definition, a startup has no functioning business case. If it has a functioning business case, it can very quickly move towards break-even, and it is perhaps not out of risk, but out of this chaotic situation. So the first job to do for any startup founder, for any entrepreneur, pioneer, is the validation. Validation is the first and most important job, because this keeps the runway short to break even. This is your most important, you're in the danger zone at that time. And this is just a question of time until risks hits you, especially in these times. And then the question is, as I mentioned, these three instruments, how to deal with it. And I say, you don't have many options as a startup. You very quickly can run out of options, and this is the end. So how to deal with it? This is all about resource management. The question is, what are your resources? If it is not money, then it is time. And then it is the question where to invest your focus of time. You have perhaps you're a one-man show, you're a couple of men, but you have to focus. The first and utmost important is cash, because this helps you with your most important job, business model validation. Validation of your hypothesis, getting you closer to the market, getting you closer to understand who pays in the end really for your product, who assures your business case. This is cash, and cash is the most important one. Investors is the second one, because investors are usually people, you have this in mind, the old man, a bigger one, sitting since years on a table and looking at the market. But this is not senseless, because they observe the markets for years. They understand things which you don't understand. They have seen business models coming and going, succeeding and dying. And they understand things which you don't think of, which you cannot understand at that point where you are. So they are sort of traffic concentrators, assets actually, I call them. Very, very valuable, and this absolutely makes sense to get in contact as early as possible, even if you're not right now longing for a financing round. It makes sense. Grants are the thing which is farthest off the, I don't say reality, but your job as validating the business case. However, they have a reason, especially in our market in Austria, also Germany, with very low liquidity, especially in these times, but also before. This is the reason why grants have such a significance. They step in the gap between investors which don't want to take all the risk for a startup project, or perhaps which wouldn't take the risk anyways if there wouldn't be a grant to prolong the runway which they give to the startup as soon as they invest into the startup. It's just about risk in their perception. Perhaps a couple of words about the grants. If you go for grants, especially in the beginning, it makes, as an AI startup and also sustainability startups, it absolutely makes sense to go for the national level. If you have a chance, get some information about regional, so the SFG, Steiermärkische Forschungsförderungsgesellschaft, but also the Carinthia Fonds. They have very good instruments. It's not in all of the how to say, Bundesländer the case, but in many of them. And this is sometimes even easier to get money from than on the national level. EU funding, people often asking for EU funding, is usually something for later stage, scale-up stage. EU is asking you actively, did you already cover all the national instruments? So usually this is not for the starters. Yeah, some tips. In the end, take your time. If you go for grants, grants are important, but take your time. And I hope that some of these insights help you with keeping resilient and alive. Thank you.